Welcome to OddJobs Hijinx, and what we're looking at here at the beginning of our video is what we're going to be making this week. That's right, these super large chairs that Josh has made for the city of Monticello for various companies and businesses and entities in the city and the county, the police department, the library, and just a couple other chairs that Josh utilizes around the farmers market and so forth. And so that is our job for this video. So we head off to the hardware store, and Josh has a layout of all of the lumber that he's going to need. Now, based on conditions, the lumber can range from just under $200 to over $500. And as most of us remember through the COVID era, lumber had gotten very expensive. And so we're looking at the screws we're going to use and some of the paint we're going to use as well as an exterior. Josh then heads out to the lumber yard. And it's here at the lumber yard he's going to go find the lumber that he needs. And he's going to be fairly particular about what he gets out. Obviously, you want straight boards, and you also don't want a lot of ripples. You don't want the board to be bowed, if at all possible. And sometimes you're at the mercy of what's at the lumber yard that day. So he may have to go through several of these to try to find what he needs. And then in his own mind, he also is thinking, where am I going to use this lumber? Is it going to be on the back? Is it going to be on the seat? Is he going to use that piece of lumber for the arms, for instance? And so this takes about 20 minutes of picking out his lumber, working with the lumber yard fella there that's in charge and making sure that lumber doesn't just walk away.
Out of both aisles.
So as you can see, Josh has all of the lumber that he needs. You can see the various sizes and lengths based on the sheet that he had in his pocket. Again, we're just double checking with the lumber yard manager, making sure that we have the pieces that we purchased. And we're heading back to Josh's workshop to get started on the big chair. So we're back at Josh's place, and you can see some of the lumber being laid out, plus the skill saw. We'll talk about more of the tools as we get into the project. And in the next segment, we're going to let Josh begin telling us how this is done.
All right, Josh, we got all this lumber laid out. You've got all the boards that you need to build a chair. What's one of the first things, now that you've got it laid out, that you're measuring for and you're going to cut for?
These are going to be the back pieces, the back of the chair that you lean up against.
Right.
It takes 5 of them, 6 feet long. I'm going to get those out of these 3 boards right here.
So that's why you got 3 of those.
I got 3.
Yeah.
They're 12 feet long. The backs are 6 feet apiece. And like all lumber that comes, even nominal, it's always going to be longer than you get a 2x12. It's going to be 2 by 12 foot and 3/4 or something, and that's that 3/4 right there. I'm going to eliminate and cut off.
That'll give you a nice square end.
So I need 5 of these total, and once I get all 6 of them cut, actually I'm going to cut these 2, and then we're going to rip these 2. Then we're going to cut another one and rip it. And I'm going to be ripping the sides off. To taper it.
Right.
It's only going to be about 9 inches wide at the bottom and 11 1/4 at the top.
So that's the in between these 2 lines is what we don't need. That's just basically
what we don't need.
Right.
Rather than cutting 6 and then 6, I just measure off each end and do it in one cut, one time.
And we have the OddJobs Hijinx mascot here. Hey, Doug. It's Doug. So now we've got those pieces cut, and you've got 2 slats, or the beginnings of 2 slats.
I have 2 backs.
2 backs, yeah.
There you go. But while I have these right here, before I move them, I'm going to go ahead and taper them. Like I said, they're narrower at the bottom than they are the top, because the bottom of the back is narrower than the top is. It's shaped like this.
Right.
So I've got to rip 1 5/8 inches off of each side of this to nothing, which produces those pieces you see over there.
Right, so this pile is from previous chairs that you've built. And as we saw in the intro, Josh has built around 70 of these chairs for various businesses and individuals here in the Lake Cumberland Monticello area. So he's got a lot of leftover lumber from some of those earlier projects. But we're going to go from start to finish with this project, buying the lumber, getting the paint that we're going to use for the background at least, and the screws, of course, to put it all together. And again, Josh is going to go through this step by step on how he builds one of these big chairs. And you'll see chairs like them in other places. But Josh has been doing this for about 5 years and has gotten to where he doesn't usually even have to look at a piece of paper. You know how it is if you've done a lot of something. But he does have a piece of paper. It just reminds him of what he needs to do. And then he gets busy with it. And it takes about a day to put the wood together, and maybe a base coat of paint. Sometimes a little longer, just depends on the weather and things like that. And he builds these here at his own workshop.
So now I'm just clamping down a straight edge to make this cut instead of measuring and popping a line and trying to pop the line. I've got this 2x4 here that's pretty straight. Got a nice clean edge on it. All skill saws. I don't care who makes it. The edge of the blade to the short side of the table is going to be 1.5 inches. So I'm setting this straight edge at 1 5/8 inches at this end. And I'm going to set it at 2 5/8 on this end. And I'm just going to run the saw right down the straight edge. And it will take off exactly nothing to 1 inch. And then I'll flip it over and I'll do the other side. This just makes it fast. It's super quick. I'm using a big heavy duty worm drive saw just for ripping with a brand new blade on it to keep this quick.
And another piece of scrap to join the pile. So the end away from us is the narrow end, which will be the bottom.
Yep, that is correct. And you could make this design any way you wanted. If anyone wanted to build a chair, they don't have to go with these measurements. They could make the back square if they wanted, not tapered.
Right.
I'm just all about the scale of everything looking like an Adirondack chair. And you know, typically they're wider on the top of the back than they are at the bottom.
Down at the bottom, that's right.
To be a true Adirondack chair.
And literally your skill saw guide there is just following the wood, isn't it?
Yeah. The edge of this to the edge of that is 1.5 inches. So by setting 1 5/8 inches, I'm taking off about a blade width here to 1 inch up there, because up there I'm 2 5/8 inches.
2 5/8.
And I'm just running this edge of the saw right down the edge of that straight edge. It's fast. It'll be perfectly straight rather than trying to follow a line. It's really quick. Of course, I'm wearing my eye protection, as everyone should when using power tools. If you ever see me not wearing them, call me out on it. We all need that every now and then.
Absolutely.
All right, I'm just going to put this off to the side for now, because this board is ready. We don't need to do anything else to that. That is a complete backboard. Set this next one up. Do the same thing. I'm trying to keep all of my steps to a minimum. I want to make sure every step counts. That's why I'm cutting one and then ripping one and cutting one, so that I'm not moving it back and forth, trying to keep all my movements.
Economy of movement.
We're only doing one today, so it's really not that important, but when I'm trying to do 8 of these,
Right.
at a time, every step counts when you're getting in a production mindset.
Right. And all of this wood is pressure treated.
Every bit of this wood is pressure treated.
Right, because these are going to be outside.
Yeah, we want these chairs to last as long as possible.
And folks, we'll have a list of the lumber that Josh purchased. We'll put that up here in a little bit. Show you the exact pieces that he buys with the least amount of waste to put one of these chairs together. And that way, if you wanted to go price it out at your local big box store or something like that, you can.
Some of you might be thinking, man, that's a big saw. I don't have a saw that big. I just have a small homeowner skill saw. Would that work? Absolutely. Absolutely. It's probably not going to cut as fast. Obviously it wouldn't. It's not as powerful. But the worm drive saw that I'm using, I have it because I do this for a living, and I, do a lot of cutting and a lot of ripping.
Right. And you'll see Josh in this saw all over the, in future videos and whatnot, because again, that's his work saw. He uses it all the time on the job site. And believe me, he's tried them all, so.
Yeah, I've run every make and model there is. Makita, Milwaukee, all of them. And I currently am running 3 different brands of saws. I'm running a cordless Milwaukee, I'm running the worm drive rigid, and I run a regular Makita. All have different purposes, and I use them for different things. But I mainly do my big heavy cutting with the big rigid there, just because it's so powerful.
Right.
Especially ripping. And with a brand new blade. You see how fast it's just beating right through there.
And the blade you're using today is, what brand is it?
It's an Irwin.
Just an Irwin, so you can get this at your local Lowe's.
$5-6 for this blade,
Right.
as opposed to 20 for a Diablo.
For a Diablo, right. And some people swear by different blades, Just keep in mind what type of project it is and what your budget is.
And you may be wondering, where's my plan? You're not seeing a plan. You're like, where's these numbers coming from? Where's all this information at? It's all up here, folks. I've been building these chairs for 4 or 5 years now. There's over 75 of them located around this part of the country, most of them in the county here in Wayne County, Kentucky. But there's some that are in Ohio. Some have made it to the Carolinas.
Well, it's funny you should say the Carolinas, because I just had a friend down in South Carolina and they had a big chair down there. I'm not saying it was the one you made, but they had one down there.
Probably not the one I sold, but yeah, I'm sure. I've seen them quite all over. The design that I'm using is very distinct. I would be able to pick out any chair that I built anywhere. If it ended up in the Key West and I got down to Key West, I would be able to tell you if I was the builder of it or not, just based on the materials used and the type of design it is. And I can tell just by looking at it if I built it or not.
And you take a picture of each chair too.
I take a picture of every single chair, multiple pictures actually.
Occasionally these chairs are picked up by the non-owners, and Josh has had to go and identify the chair to be absolutely certain that it's the chair that he sold to somebody. So
we've had 3 of these chairs stolen over the past 5 years. 2 were recovered fully. 1 was recovered in the exact shape it was stolen. 1 was recovered completely painted a different design, but I was still able to identify it. The nice thing about building these out of wood is just like a fingerprint. all these grains are individual to that one piece of wood, and there are no two pieces of wood that are the same. So by documenting what I'm doing, not just the painted product, but the placement of the screws and the wood grain, knot locations, it was very easy to positively identify the chair as mine. And then the third one that was stolen was never recovered. It was last seen in the back of a pickup truck with out-of-state tags heading south. Okay, these three are 100% ready to be attached to the chair. The next two are going to require one extra cut.
All right, so these next ones you said are going to have to an additional cut?
They get one additional cut. So those three will be the center of the back.
Okay.
These next two are going to be the two outside boards of the back, and I round the outside corners off. So two of these boards will have a rounded off corner, which I have a specific radius that I use. It's top secret, paint can. I won't give you the number, paint can.
So we don't know if it's a gallon paint can or a pint. It's a paint can.
Top secret.
A top secret, okay.
So I will not reveal the number that it is. But I will say paint can.
Paint can.
Okay, here comes the top secret part. Paint can. I'm going to use that same radius everywhere there's a radius. So both of the arms get it and two of the back chairs get it. This is that moment where if you're not happy with the wood you got and you think that you're going to use a board but you only want to use one side of it, this is that moment where you need to decide what side's going to be showing. Because one of these is going to be a left and one of these is going to be a right. At this point I haven't cut anything. This board could be either a left or a right. But I like this side of the board better. So I'm going to cut this radius off. This will
And that'll be your left
side. So when I go to make my next ones, when I need to pay attention to the side that I want and make it a right. Because if I cut it the same way and it ends up being a left, I'm going to have to cut another one.
Turn that back over because we had a really bad knot, didn't we?
Yeah, I'm trying to hide that knot and that crack.
On the back, yeah.
Where this side is better looking.
No knot, and we definitely don't have that wide crack there.
And using pressure treated lumber like this, it's going to have cracks. This is rough, you know, it's not rough sawn, but this is rough lumber.
Right, and our folks need to realize, again, this is just outdoor marketing chairs. These are not meant for like real people sitting in for
Although you
reals.
could.
I mean, you could,
You're
but
going to look small.
you're going to look very
This
small.
is a very big chair.
Yes, indeed. Once we get this chair done, we'll show you how big it is.
And again, folks, this is going to be the back of the chair. This is going to be the back left board. So this will be the outside edge of the back of the chair.
Right.
Then it'll be 3 regular boards, and then there'll be another one, and this cut will be on the other side for the right.
For the right.
And again, I'm just going to put this here in the stack of finished pieces. These are the only 2 tools that I use as far as power tools in the process of this besides a drill. And I'm only using the drill to screw it together. Other than that, you don't need to have a big, huge toolbox to put this together or to build one of these.
And you're measuring out here 6 feet
6 feet. This is
from both ends, and that
from
gives
both
you
ends.
the gap.
This is my extra piece. I'm not going to cut it yet.
That's right. This is the last of
This
the 3.
is the last that I need. I want this to be my face. It's going to be a right. So again, I'm going to cut that corner off.
Right. Using our
Paint can.
paint can for the radius.
Top secret. I'm not going to tell you the number.
Don't
There's
tell
no
us.
measurement for this radius.
Right. Don't tell us what that is.
I'm not telling you what it is. Although, if you were smart, you could take your ruler and you could figure the diameter of that can, find the center of it, come up with the radius, and you would know what that is. But I'm not going to share that information. You'll have to figure that out on your own.
I mean, you could use a protractor and do the same thing.
You could. Or you could just pick up a paint can.
Top secret paint can. That's right.
And if you're building a chair, you're probably going to paint it. So you'll probably have a paint can.
A paint can. That's I hadn't thought about that, but you're right.
You know,
Paint can's probably handy.
a paint can might come in handy. This only works when you plug it in, folks.
No electrons.
So when you're doing this with your straight edge too, you want to kind of make sure you're close to your 2 5/8 up there and close to when you throw this down. If this is way over here like this, and I set this at 1 5/8 and then I swing the knot, this is no longer going to be 1 5/8. And I know that, so I just try to get it pretty close before I start. And that way when I clamp this end, I don't have to come back and double check it again.
Right. Because it's just going to pivot.
It's just going to pivot on that point. And that was only a 30-second away from where I needed it when I threw it down.
And again, this is not fine furniture. We're not.
Yeah, this is not intended to be fine furniture. This is a marketing thing. I do build these as fine furniture, and I have built plenty of these as fine furniture in the past. I take more care, but I do not build them out of 2x pressure treated lumber. And they're not 8 foot tall and 6 feet deep.
Have you ever made any of these out of, or not the big ones, but maybe the Adirondacks for around a deck, pool,
Absolutely.
fire pit, out of cedar, or what kind of wood would you use?
I have always used pine for that.
Uh-huh.
Non-pressure treated.
And then stain it?
and finish it however the customer wants it. The majority of them I did in Mexico. While my wife and I were doing some world traveling, we landed a job at a Marina Milagro in Isla Mujeres, Mexico. And I built about 25 of these there. Basically the same design, the same plan, about the same, everything just scaled down much smaller to a normal size chair that you could pick up with one hand. And they were all pine. And then we painted them this royal blue because that was the Marina's colors.
That was their colors?
And gold. So that was the last of the big long rips for this chair.
Now we just need to do the radius.
I put that radius on that end.
And folks, we're doing this outside today. Again, if you had a big workshop, obviously you could do that indoors. And it's only 94 degrees today, so
As long as your door is 8 foot tall. Otherwise you will not
you
get
won't
the
get the
out.
chair out. Well, you could cut all the pieces, I guess.
You could cut all the pieces inside
Assemble
and
it
build
outside.
the chair outside.
Yeah.
Okay.
And just like that, we got
That's all 5 pieces
all 5
of the back.
of the back. The middles and the 2 end pieces with radiuses cut. And this extra piece of wood is just extra at this point.
Yeah, this is
Josh will accumulate these pieces again when he's doing 6, 7, 8 of these at a time, and that'll get used in another chair.
All right, since they're right here on the sawhorses, and I'm all about every step being important because we're production minded right now,
Right.
we're going to go ahead and cut these. These are going to be my seat backs. I'm sorry, my seats themselves.
The actual seats.
Not the seat back, but the seat itself.
And we're looking at what lumber here are we looking at?
This is a 2x8.
2x8.
These are 8 feet long because the chair is 4 feet wide. And I'm just going to go ahead and cut 2 4s out of each one of these. I need 5 of them. And then we're going to use that piece there for something else. And again, I'm measuring off each end just to keep my cuts and my steps as close together. I'm not cutting here and cutting there. I'm just cutting 2 cuts right here at one time.
Right.
Keep my steps down. It's all about how many steps. In the production world, the best way to get fast is to get efficient. And don't forget to plug in your saw. It only works when it's plugged in.
Now you're looking these boards over, like which one do you want to be the top and which is going to be the bottom?
These pieces, because they're an equal 4-foot cut on both, so everything's just a straight 4-foot 2x8. At the time of assembly, that's when I'll be looking at the sides of which one's which. One of these I'm not going to use, and right now I'm looking at this piece because it's got this bad mark on it where they routed it and the router got carried away.
Right
I
there.
need 5 for the seat.
Right.
Then I need one to make the radius back. I'll probably use this piece to make the radius back. You won't see it, won't be in contact with it.
So now we have our 5 seat pieces, back pieces, with 1 extra each of those, which will be saved for a later chair project. And you're looking for, so this lumber is what you're using for that radius?
Yeah, so the back of the chair is also on a radius. So I need that radius piece to screw the backs to. But then I also need a radius piece that's going to be the last part of the seat that goes into the radius back. That fills in that gap, but I need the piece of wood behind it that we're going to attach those to. I use a 2x6 for my vertical bracing, so I want this to be at least 5.5. Because that's what a 2x6 is. It's 5.5. And I know it looks like I just randomly picked up a piece of wood out of the pile. I kind of did, but this is a piece that I cut off of an older chair. So this is the radius I've used on all my other chairs. It's another way I can tell it's mine. I came up with this radius 5 years ago. I've been using the same radius the whole entire time. I've never changed. I just pull a piece out of the pile and use it to scribe my mark.
That's convenient because it acts as your template, doesn't it?
It acts as a template, and it's also another good way to identify. I can take this radius, I could take this board with me and take it to any chair that I've built and lay it right in there, and it will line up perfectly.
Right.
I know what y'all are thinking is, man, that's going to take forever to cut through that pressure treated wood with that jigsaw. Well, I'm not going to use the jigsaw, folks. I'm getting ready to cut the circle with the skill saw. I know a lot of you are thinking, well, that's impossible. You can't cut a curved line with a skill saw. Well, I'm getting ready to show you how it's done.
Yeah, Josh, I don't believe you. I don't think you can do this.
Right now, I have the blade set at full depth, so it's cutting about 2 inches. So this much of the blade is buried into the board at one time.
Right.
Yes, it would be very difficult to cut a radius with that much of the blade buried. What I'm going to do is adjust my height so that I'm just going into the wood, about halfway. You see that? I'm only going to go through about halfway. So now I've only got about this much of the blade embedded in there, so it's going to be much easier to turn. Now, granted, my kerf is going to get bigger.
Mm-hmm.
We all know that because I'm going to be bending this around through there. It's going to want to bind a little bit, but that's why we're going only half the depth for one pass, and then we're going to go full depth for the second pass, but I'm just going to go full depth. I'm not going to go full depth the blade can go, because then that's putting more blade in the board. It's going to be harder to cut a straight line.
be darned. Curved cut with a skill saw. And we're not done, but we got the radius that we want for it.
Still faster than the jigsaw, even doing it twice.
So I see what you're saying with the kerf. Now, explain to our audience again, if they're kind of new, what the kerf is.
The kerf is the thickness of the saw blade. The thickness of that carbide tooth is your kerf.
Right.
But because I was cutting on a radius, the blade was actually in there kind of cocked. So the kerf got a little wider.
Wider.
We're talking minuscule, 30 seconds of an inch. Nothing big because I didn't set my blade full depth. See, I still just have my blade right at 1.5 inches, which only meant this distance of the blade was in the wood. So I'm only bending it across that surface rather than full depth, which would have been more. So this is what the back of the backboards will attach to. They'll screw in like this. This will be the last seat board that will butt up to them, and they will actually be like this on the chair with the backboards sandwiched in between them.
Oh, okay. And essentially what you've got there closest to you was the piece that you used as your template.
Yes, this is basically
That piece.
that piece right there.
That we used a little. Interesting. And folks, if you look closely, you can see where he made those two cuts here, because you can see the first cut would be the top portion, and then the second cut went the rest of the way, even on this piece. And if he shows you the other side of this board, it's a little bit cleaner. We're not seeing that line as pronounced.
It's right there, but it's
there,
not as pronounced.
but it's
as
not
the
as
other one.
pronounced.
I probably cut this one a little better than I cut that one. Oh, obviously, yes, I did.
So what piece are we working with now?
Okay, this is going to be the main base of the chair. Essentially the back legs that hold the back of the chair, and at the same time it's also the seat base. The seat boards will attach to these. These are going to be going down at an angle,
Okay.
holding the seat base and be the back legs. I know without a chair here to look at it can be a little difficult to understand exactly, and these aren't going to get just cut at 6 foot. They're also going to get a triangle cut off at either end, and I'm going to cut this one off on this end because it's split,
Right.
and that will eliminate the split. And I think on that end we're going to take off the knot, and I'm also just going to pull a piece out of my pile that is a cut off from another chair to use as a template
Right.
to make this as quick and painless as possible.
So when you were looking at this piece of wood at the lumber yard, you probably figured, well, that's not going to be an issue for me
gonna
because
cut that
cutting
off
that
there.
off, and same, you might not even thought about the knot, but if let's say you were thinking about the knot, and you probably were, I'm going to cut that off. So
Yeah.
that way you didn't have to have a perfect piece of
No,
lumber.
I try to pick the best boards I can, but slim pickings today at the hardware stores, we're no longer getting first of anything, and you really got to pick through the pile, which, you know, you were there with me. I think you saw there was only 4 of these boards on the whole. We only had 4 of these to choose
Right.
from.
Right. Yeah, folks, I'll probably run some B-roll there and just kind of show you what we were picking through at the lumber yard a little bit earlier today.
Okay, I'm going to come back over to my handy dandy wood pile I got here.
Now, not everybody's going to have a handy dandy wood pile,
I'm going to get one of these.
and you're going to get the
This is a cut off from another chair.
right.
And this cut is what completes the leg. And you might be looking at it going, man, that just doesn't make any sense to me, but it will. Once you see the chair go together, it all makes perfectly good sense.
And that's just a triangle. That's all that is, right?
That's all that is. And I'm removing it. It's not any part of the chair. All right, so these two pieces are complete. These are my back vertical pieces. I got this in a 12 because I also need my arm supports out of this too. I'll make these 60 inches, 5 feet. So I'm going to mark 60 there. I'm going to mark 60 here. I'm going to use this piece here to make my 2 arm supports.
Oh, cool. Again, no waste.
These 2 pieces are done. Now for the arm supports, I usually just make them 8 inches a piece. I do the same thing. I come 8 inches off each end. And then I like to put a nice little 45 on it. Just to make the one end look cool. I'm going to soften it up a little bit is all I'm doing. One arm support. Here's the other. Well, we're getting close. We've only got a few more pieces to go.
Yeah, we don't have much raw lumber left.
So those are the 2x10s. Okay, we're going to do this next. These are our 2 front legs.
Damn. 2 front legs out of that piece.
The 2 front legs are going to be this piece.
And this is a 2x12
So 2x12 by 8 foot.
by 8.
They are 42 inches tall.
Dang.
So it's 42 inches from the ground to the arm of the chair. The arm sits on top of these.
So this really is built for giants. And folks, yes, you are hearing a rooster in the background. He's an ornery rooster, but he does live here.
You gotta let us know when it's time to get up.
Well, this rooster does his
crows
call
all hours
all
of the
day.
night and day.
So
He
if
don't
you're
care.
not up by now, you're.
All we get out of this one is a nice piece of dunnage.
And again, we can see that piece, multiple versions of that piece right here in the old pile.
Okay.
So those are front legs-ish. Oh, we had a board hiding
All right,
there.
this is a board too that I took because there was only a couple of them there in this size, and I knew I was only going to need half of it. This is the better half of this board. As you can see, this end of it's got a bad split in it.
Yeah, it's got rough edge too.
That split,
look
this
at
whole
that.
corners wants to pop right off there. See that?
Yeah.
We're not going to use that end of it. This end of the board is actually pretty nice. And this is, they're going to see, this is going to be looking right at you.
This
This
is kind of
going
like
to be the face of the seat, is this piece. And again, this is a 4-foot piece. If this was the only piece they had and I needed the whole 8-footer, I would not have taken this. But because I only needed half of it, I'm taking it. Okay, the only piece that's left to cut is the 2 arms.
wow, from a 2x12.
Yeah, the arms are 2x12.
Look at this, folks. These are going to be cut into arms.
This is a 2x12 by 10. So the arms of this chair are 5 feet long, 12 inches wide.
5 feet. So you practically use all of it again, except for that little bit in the
all
middle.
of it again, except this little 3/4 of an inch, and I'm going to cut 2 more of those triangles off, one off each one of these chairs, just to soften it up a little bit so it's not so hard. And I put radiuses on these. Again, top secret number. I won't tell. Paint can.
Can't give away all your secrets. I mean, top secret.
Well, I mean, they don't know what brand of paint I got.
They don't.
It could be
I mean,
a different gallon can.
Totally different can, you know.
They might be getting a 3/4 gallon can. You know?
It's possible. Probably not. But. And again, folks, you know, he's got this, what'd you call this, worm drive saw?
Worm drive.
Like, what kinds of saws are there? What does it mean by a worm drive?
Okay. A normal skill saw, the motor is sitting perpendicular to the blade.
Right.
So the shaft is this way and the motor's turning its direct drive from the motor directly to the blade. The blade is attached to the shaft.
Right.
This saw, as you see, the motor is this way. So the motor shaft is right inside here,
Mm-hmm.
and it has a worm gear on it, which is a long spiral gear. There's another gear on the shaft here. So there's actually, it's not direct drive.
It's not direct.
There's actually gear ratio going on here.
Right.
So because of the gear ratio, you can up the amount of power going to the blade without putting a bigger motor on it.
Oh, based on the diameter of the teeth?
Based on the diameter of the teeth and the diameter of the shaft, just like a bicycle changing gears on a bicycle, you just use different sizes in here to achieve the RPMs that you want and the amount of power that you want.
Right.
So you can get a much more powerful saw in just a little bit bigger package. Where if you were going to try to get this kind of power out of a direct drive saw, the motor would have to be substantially bigger.
I see. Okay.
Still heavier than a regular saw.
Right.
But also, if you notice when I'm cutting, where my handle is here in the back,
Right.
on a regular skill saw, the handle's usually on top.
Right.
With the handle on top, you're more prone to twist and turn. When you're right here on the back like this, it's easier to keep it nice and straight because you've got this inline motion going from the back. Ideal for ripping. This is totally a ripping saw. If you're ripping wood, lots of it, you want a worm drive. Okay, this is another situation we're getting into here where we have a left and a right.
Okay.
So we need to strategically think about how we're going to lay this out and what pieces we're going to cut off. We're going to want to look at both sides of the wood, decide which side we want facing up. I like this side better than the other side, and I like this side better than the other side. Well, I don't know. I like this side better on this one. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a left and a right. So again, I'm going to take my piece of scrap out of my handy dandy scrap pile. I'm going to cut this little triangle off here just to soften this arm up so it doesn't look so big and bulky and hard. I'm going to take my top secret measuring device here, my paint can, and I'm going to radius both the front edges of this so that I don't have someone get hooked on this hard corner that's also very strong and very sharp when they enter or exit this chair.
Right, because
even though they are really for promoting the business in which they're in front of, they're also a photo op for people. We expect people to climb in these chairs and get their picture taken. Kids down at the library, the one on the square, they use every first Saturday of the month for book time, where they get out and they get the kids piled up in it and they do a story time. There's other chairs located at local marinas around here that probably during the season get a couple hundred pictures taken a day.
a day, yeah.
And there's people in and out of them. And so I want to keep them soft without taking away the masculinity of the chair, but soften it up just enough where no one's going to get hurt. And again, I'm doing a left and a right. That's going to be my right looking at the chair, and this one will be the left.
And Josh, you do these chairs again to help out. You're on the local arts council, so these chairs are basically, marketing for the businesses mostly in town. But this is an arts council kind of project.
Yes, that's how it started. Was an arts council project. We were asked by the chamber to help out with it. To help produce the chairs for the local businesses that were part of the chamber, just to help promote business. Every town's got their own little thing. Some have fish, some have manatees, some have sailboats.
Right, Lexington has horses, of course.
Yeah, Monticello has the giant chairs. And it caught on. Took more traction than I ever would have guessed. And so not every chair that I build goes to a local business. Some of these go to private individuals. There have been some that were built and taken to out-of-state businesses. The owners live here and they come visit the lake and they saw the chairs and they wanted them for their business back home.
Right.
So I'll build them for whoever really wants one. Anybody that wants a chair, I don't care where you're at. You could be in California. If you want one, we'll build it and we'll ship it to you if that's what you want. Some of you might be thinking, man, you could put a sharper blade on there and get through that quicker. Well, you know, if I thought it was that easy, I would do it. Keep in mind, this is yellow pine that's been pressure treated. It's very hard. You see, I was cutting through a knot right there, even harder than the regular wood.
Right.
I'm trying to be easy on my saw. I wear out tools. I don't abuse them and break them, but I use them so much I wear them out. These all cost money. I've already had to replace this piece right here on this one, the keeper, that holds the blade in place. It's just cast pot aluminum. The rest of it's steel. If you put too much pressure on the blade by pushing too hard, it will break. The blade's not dull. It's a brand new blade. It's super sharp. It's just really hard wood, and I'm trying to not abuse my tools. Okay, that's the last piece of the chair. That's all of them.
Wow, I bet this has only taken, what, an hour?
Maybe.
So you were able to cut all these pieces in about an hour. Folks, we can go back and look at the footage and get an exact number. If I can think about it, I'll try and put that up on the screen. But, you know, again, know that Josh has only built 70 plus of these, and he's also a professional construction and carpenter person. So, I mean, his work with saws, as you saw there, he's in and out, because he's had so much practice. So, again, we're not trying to show you how fast you can make one of these. We want you to slow down and make it yours. And whatever your skill level is, again, do it at your pace.
OddJobs Hijinx.
If you had to guess, Josh, we talked a little bit about this off camera, but these 2x12s, so many. And the other lumber, none of the pieces are small. What do you think is the total weight?
About 500 pounds.
500 pounds. So again, you know, he delivers these on a trailer. So if anybody wants one, when we say shipping, you got to keep in mind it's going to be a tall piece, and it's going to weigh about 500 pounds. So. So far, we've only used two tools. We've used the skill saw, and we've used the jigsaw. And what we're about to do now is take deck screws and a drill, cordless drill. And that's all the lumber. Look at it from this side. But again, some of you who can put things together in your brain, you've already put this chair together in your mind. If you're like me and you have a genetic defect and you can't do 3D mechanics, you'll get to see it come together piece by piece in the video. So Josh, we're using what kind of deck screws for this?
These are number 10 diameter screw by 3 inches long with a Phillips head, as opposed to a square or a star.
Or torque, yeah. And as you can see, he's got a drill here he's going to use with a full battery. This happens to be a Milwaukee. He tends to use Milwaukees for his drills. But you've got DeWalt too, I think, if I remember
I
correctly.
have some DeWalt tools. I just recently, in the past couple years, moved away from DeWalt and into the Milwaukee, not for any reason other than I knew my DeWalt stuff was getting old and I was gonna have to replace it soon, and the Milwaukee stuff was on sale. It was cheaper than the DeWalt, and instead of replacing with a DeWalt, I thought I'd give Milwaukee a chance. I've had Milwaukee tools in the past and was always happy with them. They never let me down.
And Josh has done just thousands of projects in the local area, and he usually works alone, and so he's developed skills and shortcuts and things to where he can even build a chair by himself. He doesn't need help. I mean, he probably would turn it down, but you can see here he's screwing these in with the square lumber all by himself, and he'll build the entire chair all by himself. I'm just here to be moral support and to get the footage, because we wanted this first project for OddJobs Hijinx to be something that he's done a lot of. And you might be asking what kind of drill. This is, what would you call this type of drill, John?
Impact.
Impact drill, instead of just a regular drill. Could you use a regular drill, or does the impact drill make it easier?
The impact drill puts the screws in easier than a regular drill with the impact motion that it has.
Right. So now we've got that front, we'll call it a fascia board. It's not, but the frontage board there for the chair.
I did forget one board.
Oh,
We're gonna have to cut one more of those radius boards.
one more radius board. All right. Josh mentioned this a moment ago, but again, these are mainly for marketing, but people do get in these chairs for pictures. So, you know, sanding, a little bit of sanding, the paint and so forth, is to ensure that nobody would hit a really sharp edge or corner.
The chair just before this one went to a local nursing home and was actually made into a rocking chair.
Oh, so you had one of these as a rocking
I
chair.
had one of these as a rocker, yeah. Which was just a slight modification to the same exact chair, putting the rockers on it.
Right. And he's using his square there to make sure he's got a 90 degree to this board. Not bowed out. And you want to leave a little bit of gappage there, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm actually not even going to worry about the gap as much as I am going to be my overall length from the front to the back of the board, because these boards are not perfect. Again, this is number 2 pine, pressure treated. Nothing about these boards are perfect.
And you're sinking these screws in a little bit so that they wouldn't catch on anything.
Yeah, I want them down some, but I'm not burying them in case
Right.
we ever have to take something apart.
Right.
I have had one of these that got beat up pretty bad in a windstorm, and I had to disassemble it and rebuild it. And it would have been really tough if all the screws would have been completely buried. Now it's this point that I go ahead and attach the front legs before I make it any heavier and make it more cumbersome to handle.
So this piece of wood that you've got here in your hand, you use this as basically just a stand.
Just to stand to kind of roughly hold it where it's going to be while I attach the legs.
Okay.
And again, I have a number in my head that I've been using for these the whole time I've been building them. And it's a measurement from the ground to the top of the chair. It's not cast in stone that it has to be this number. This height of this leg is going to dictate how much slope there is in this seat.
Okay.
If it's too steep, it's going to be super uncomfortable.
Right.
If it's not steep enough, it's going to be super uncomfortable and you're going to be following out of the chair. So with all the other Adirondack chairs I've built in my life that were used for sitting, for comfort, everyday use, I tried to mimic this after that to keep the scale and proportion and everything correct. So I have this number in my head. I'm not going to tell you what it is. I think you can figure it out on your own.
Some of you will be bright enough to zoom in on that measurement.
Again, it's not an exact science, man. It's, you know, it's just like, you know, when you're building 50 of these or 75 of them, or you know, you're trying to keep everything as consistent as possible. I always do one, put one screw in it, then I'll do the other one with that top secret number.
Right.
Something don't seem right. Oh, it seems perfectly right. It doesn't seem right. I could just have a bad hump in the ground here too.
Right.
It's the right number. It's all coming back to me now, Brian.
You have to scoot it back.
Yeah, I put that one in the wrong spot. That's the issue. That's why it didn't seem right.
There you go.
The other reason we don't bury the screws. them at the right height and the right location. And I'm working on uneven ground here. I want to make sure that this is relatively plumb.
Right.
But it's more of an eyeball thing. And what I do is I line up both of them to make sure that they're both on the same plane. And when I see I have them both on the same plane, that's when I go ahead and put the remainder of the screws in there.
You could use a level for that if you were on concrete.
Well, you could use a level for that, but you know, if you're not on level ground and you use a level, it's not going to be right.
Oh, that makes sense.
And the chairs don't always end up on level ground.
Yeah, several of them are out front of the business, just on the ground. So we're back to putting these bottom seat boards on. And you have a little bit of a reveal here on the bottom board, and that's by design.
Where's that?
The reveal here on the.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, it's, again, we're not working with perfect pieces of wood here. This is all number 2, pressure treated.
Right. All right, Josh, since we cut away on that last segment, you actually had to cut another piece of wood.
Yeah, I did.
What did we do?
I forgot a piece. You're going to call me out like that. I forgot the lower back piece, and I had to make one.
Lower back piece, okay.
Yeah, the lower back piece, which is this radius piece that the backboard's attached to.
And it's similar to what you cut earlier.
Just like the upper one, but not as big.
Not as big. And folks, you can see where that's going to be now. He's got the piece he had already cut, and then he's got this new piece. And the slats are basically going to fit in between. And that's what holds them into place, and then eventually he'll screw them. Well, maybe hold them into place, not exactly, but that's where the slats will actually fit into. And he's measuring both sides just to make sure that you've got the same on both. And we're just watching off camera here, the male person do their job.
got out of his truck, man.
No. It's all about staying in the vehicle. You have to get out of your vehicle. It's too much effort.
I think those are the new bands for my bandsaw.
Oh, okay.
I was doing some cutting the other day, and my they're actually the wheel pads that the bandsaw blade rides on wore out.
Right. So we're measuring twice, 3 times maybe. Make sure we've got that exact length on both sides. There goes the big boot. Big boot's going to prevent it from moving. That's right. Big boot is a tool.
Everything's a tool.
That's one thing you learn with Josh. Everything is a tool.
Except you folks. Don't be a tool.
Don't be a tool. Don't do it. That's so not cool.
Yeah, be cool. Don't be a tool. Okay, now attach our vertical back pieces. Let me go grab my square. I have that.
Square in hand, we are back.
This is just to give me a visual to make sure I get these screwed on in the right location.
Okay. It looks like he's going to go with 4.
I'm just going to do one more now, just because you said that.
Yeah, of course.
Only because you said it.
Only because. You're going to use this square to get the proper alignment. Okay, so we got our lower one down here. We've got now an upper one. And if you're wondering how tall Josh is, he's 6'2" or 3", so that gives him some leverage for these kinds of, when he's drilling downwards.
It helps.
See that radius cut there that he did with the skill saw, 2 cuts. Plus the one on the bottom. And that board's basically flush on the bottom with the radial behind it.
Yeah.
Remember, folks, the corner he took off over there, so he's got a soft corner, and then he'll put on the other soft corner for the left-hand side on this end. Some of you are really starting to see the scale of this chair, because remember, Josh is 6'2", maybe a little bit more, so this chair is right at 7. Seven and some change, I guess.
These pieces are 6 foot.
Right, with the height there at the very back.
Probably 7, I'd say 7.5 probably.
Somewhere in that ballpark, yeah. So you can see he's fanning these out. He's got a measurement in his noggin that he's using to. And just like that, he's got the 2 curved pieces on those corners. And then it's just, remember, he's cut these other boards he's going to put in because they do taper, but they're the center ones, center pieces.
So now I'm just going to span these 3 out in here equally.
Right.
I've done so many of these, I have a basic idea where if I start here, these 2 are fixed. They're both a secret number out from the back.
Okay.
Which I'll share all these secret numbers with you if you really want to know. Just put some in the comments, I'll answer you.
Right.
And then I'm just going to span these out. But typically I want to end up with about 1 inch in between my boards.
Okay.
And the reason is in the first couple chairs that I built, I wasn't leaving an inch gap. I was just putting it together with enough of a gap to get in there with a paintbrush.
Right.
And they were hard to paint. Pretty difficult even. Especially if the gap ended up being smaller than the brush. So I intentionally made it to where I have about 1 inch gap now, which per scale on a real Adirondack chair that you're sitting in, the gap between the boards is probably going to be 1/8 to 1/4. So when you scale it up to something this size, it being 1 inch gap is really not out of scale, and it does make it easier to paint to get the brush in there.
Okay.
And that's the main reason it's like that. So I'm going to attach these with 1 screw in the bottom, about 1 inch over, 3/4 of an inch over from that one.
And flush with that.
About the same height.
Yeah. Boom. Just like that. And that'll allow him to pivot, because remember, folks, he's just in the corner there, but that keeps it in place because of the backing and 1 screw. And he'll put in this one similarly. Then he can adjust once he gets all 3 of the boards in.
Remember, this wood we're using is not perfect. It is nominal lumber. It's supposed to be a 2x12. They're not always. During the height of COVID there, some of these boards were as bad as 10.5 to 12.5.
Wow.
It was on one of these chairs that I noticed it. And I was building the chair, and my boards weren't gapping right. And I was like, did I cut something wrong? And
Right.
I started going through, and I was measuring the boards, and I measured what I had in my stack, and that's when I realized how bad the boards were as far as being, you know, nominal lumber within industry standards. Get my big foot out of here before I screw that on.
Yeah, you don't want to lose a leg over this. Just a video, Josh. If you lose a leg, we'd get more views, but it wouldn't be worth it.
No, it wouldn't be worth it. So I'm going to adjust these two a little closer.
Okay.
I'm going to have to. I've got about 1/2 or 3/4 to an inch on both sides. My gap is bigger here, so I'm just going to center this one between
And
those two.
we're just eyeballing it. This isn't.
That was a straight up miss. Angle. Okay, I'm going to move this one over just to make this gap and that gap the same.
Okay. And this is why we're using decking screws, folks. If we'd used a nail gun or something like that, it would be much harder.
I'm also not burying them really deep either. That way I can get to them and take them back out.
Right.
Another thing, these screws, when you take them out, they get hot.
Boy, they do.
Friction. Alright. And I've got the bottom evenly spaced.
And if you look down here at the bottom, folks, you can see that he's actually also, the boards themselves are going to be somewhat oriented in a radial pattern as well. So, and up here at the top.
Pretty decent.
One looks a little taller than the other, but
We'll fix that in the end.
okay.
Because you're right, they do, and I have an explanation for that. Because this backboard's on a radius, and it's leaning backwards. It's tilted down.
Right.
The middle of the board is lower than that side. Because it's on this radius that's going downhill.
Right.
So these will have a tendency to do that too. Doesn't always happen. Sometimes it's worse than others. Sometimes I compensate for it. I could pick these two up and fix that right now. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my skill saw and cut this one off.
Oh,
cut that
okay.
one off.
Yeah.
A little bit easier. Again, it's just a chair. It's not set in stone per se. There's only 4 pieces left to attach.
That's amazing. We're down to
Chair
just
is
4
complete.
pieces?
I have a little bit of cutting to do here. Some people might look at this cutting I'm going to do and go, wow, that guy's a barbarian. You're not wrong.
No, you're not wrong at all.
You're not wrong. But again, this is production style. We're going for speed here. You know, if you're building this for your own self at your backyard garden or something, take all the time you want.
Oh, so you're going to build a notch.
I'm going to notch out that back right there.
Look at that, guys. This is going to be a notch, and half of that board's going to go into the notch.
I need to cut it over to here because this needs to attach to this 2x6 on the back.
Okay. Well, that's cool. I got a feeling there'll be another, I don't know, skill saw or jigsaw.
We're going to break out the Sawzall.
Sawzall? I thought we were keeping our tool list down.
We are.
Sawzall. Well, you know what they say, folks. When you're breaking out the Sawzall,
Now, if you'd have done a straight back on your chair and hadn't fanned it out like I did,
right,
you wouldn't even need to make this notch. The edge of this board would be flush with that.
right.
But you'd have a very square, boxy looking chair.
Aesthetically, it wouldn't be as pleasing, right?
No, I want this to really look like a real Adirondack chair. You never. Also a tool.
Oh my gosh. You went caveman.
Caveman.
Total caveman. Well, folks, we're plugged in here. We were running out of a little bit of juice on the old camera, but as you can see, Josh basically has these arms where he wants them. Now he's going to screw them from the vertical into the arm, and that's going to allow him to anchor it properly. Then he'll come up to the front and he'll anchor it into the vertical board up front. All right, folks, we had a couple of technical difficulties, but what we've done, or what Josh has done, now you can see the structure supports underneath. They're just tied in from the top and from the side over here, so you can see the two screws. And we did, of course, he did that on both sides. Plus, he put in the radius board down here, which fits up against, more or less, not maybe up against, but fits the vertical seating slats. And he added a few more screws here in the back. So you can see he's screwed the arm here using these two screws into this slat here. And same thing over there. And so he's basically just structurally, he's just made it a little stronger. Each of these deck screws is giving him a little bit more rigidity, but it also ties everything together. And now he's looking at cutting these top pieces so that essentially they're going to be level with one another. So he just needs to take a little bit off. He probably could have gotten this pretty close by just adjusting it down at the bottom, but this won't take much with a skill saw. And so he goes back to his trusty skill saw to make it even there at the top. And for all intents and purposes, again, the chair is built. And he did this in about 3 hours. So this did not take him long. In fact, he thinks this may have been the quickest one he's ever built, maybe partly because we were filming and he was really just on task. But we've got some breaks in there and so forth, plus the phone technical difficulties. But you can tell he's done this many times.
The seat, and then I'll go around to the back. Then I'm going to rotate it up on its back and prop it up with the stick to get the bottom. Just go ahead and fill them away.
Yeah, I won't need much footage of you painting.
No,
Just a little.
just to start and then the finish.
Then the finish, yeah.
Watching me.
And this is basically just a base coat, right, Josh? Because
Just
we're
a base coat, yeah.
we just want it to look a little bit distressed, so
And
that
that's
when
the
we
look they're looking for, is a
Right.
distressed look. So
Right.
I'm certainly not gonna put 2 coats on it, and I'm not gonna get too carried away with this coat. I want to leave some of that.
Yep, that wood grain
Because
and
that'll be less sanding later on.
the saw blade cuts, or what do you call that again? That type of cut?
The kerf.
Well, yeah, but there's different ways you can make lumber, saw lumber.
This is off of a circular saw.
Circular. And then what was the other style?
Off of a band.
Band.
Band saw, and they would be straight lines.
Okay. And then what Josh has done in the past, folks, although he has painted several of these chairs himself, is a lot of times he'll do this base coat, or he'll just send them over to the other artists that he's with, the art council or part of the council, and they have some really good artists that will do different types of graphics. You guys would have seen the Bill of Rights one and the one they did for some of the others in the earlier part of the video. And they'll actually do those artwork designs after Josh gets done with the building process. But today we're just going to put on this base coat. Well, when he gets close to done, we'll bring you right back.
So, what time did we start on this? About
About that.
And it's 4:30?
About that, yep. Well, actually, it's after 5. Alrighty, folks. Josh has finished putting the first, well, probably the only coat of paint that he's going to put on this. This particular, we'll call it white, is just enough of an off-white that it's going to allow it to have kind of a worn look or a distressed look. But you can see he's gotten into all the crevices and corners that you would see when it's in its upright position. And no need to paint the underneath of the slats because nobody will see that. But he's also painted the back, which I'll just, well, we had an earlier shot that showed that. I won't show it again. But this is the chair. And we'll show you we'll show you the other chairs that we got some snapshots of a little bit earlier. And you got to remember, you know, this thing's over 7 feet tall in the back. And Josh and I, Josh in particular, 6'2", 6'3", somewhere in that ballpark. I mean, this chair dwarfs him. This is for a giant of a person. But in all seriousness, marketing, and it'll eventually get a company logo on those back slats that you see here. That most of that will be canvas, if you will, for the logo, and they'll put it out in front of their business, and that's how they advertise in Monticello, Kentucky, Lake Cumberland area. We'll come back and wrap it up in the next segment. Alrighty, we end all of our Odd Jobs Hijinx as best we can with Josh talking a little bit about this project. And Josh, we're just going to ask a few questions, but how do projects like this come to you?
I'm known in my community to be the kind of guy that gets things done.
Yeah.
So when a project comes up and someone's not sure about whether or not they're capable or who in town they should call,
Right.
I'm the guy that everybody calls of projects of all different sizes and shapes and kinds, because people know that I'm that guy. And if I can't get it done myself, I will find the people that are capable of getting it done, and I'll make it happen.
Understood. And folks, you're going to see on the channel when we say all kinds of projects, we mean all kinds of projects. This is one of those projects that he can take on from a more artistic standpoint to help out the town and so forth like that. But a lot of his projects are building decks, pouring concrete, and indoor carpentry and things of that nature. Josh, what is it about these chairs that make them so popular?
I think it's the size. I think it's the sheer size of the chairs, and the fact that I'm able to build them and keep them affordable for the people.
Right.
And they use it in front of their business as another means of advertising, and it brings the whole community together. They even have a pamphlet that's in all of the businesses around town and at the Chamber of Commerce, and they call this the Big Chair Challenge. And they try to promote everybody to go and sit in every chair, get your picture taken in every chair with your family.
Yeah.
And just to get people to the businesses. You know, there are some businesses that people didn't even know were there.
Exactly.
You know, and at the schools, and the schools use them for picture photo ops, and they're at the nursing homes, they're at gas stations, they're at lawyers' offices, there's some that are owned, like by myself personally. I have that one downtown that has a lake on it, and they use that every first Saturday of the month at their events and do story time there, and it just makes me feel wonderful to see a piece of mine getting used like that.
Yeah.
And by the community, and they look forward to it as a meeting place.
Absolutely. What kinds of tools did we use today for this? As big as this thing is, you think you'd have to use all kinds of tools, but in reality, it's not really that story, is it?
No, this could be done by anybody that just has a few carpentry tools. I used a skill saw, a worm drive skill saw, because there's a lot of ripping involved, and it's a powerful saw and handles that, but a regular skill saw would be just fine. I used a jigsaw for cutting the radiuses here, because they're so tight. This tight radius would be really difficult with a skill saw. I do cut the back radius with the skill saw, but that's just because it's so long. It would take the jigsaw forever to get through there, and it's not a tight radius, and it's something I can cut with the skill saw. I used a Sawzall to make the notches back here on the arms, because it's convenient, easy to get in that tight spot and manipulate to make the cut the way I want it.
Right.
I used a speed square, was just a simple square for squaring up the edges, a tape measure and a pencil, and a drill.
And a drill.
Not anything, not a bunch of money. Anybody that does any kind of home projects, any kind of DIY stuff, these are all tools that you should already have, that you probably already have
Exactly.
and use often.
And this chair took how long?
To cut all the pieces, build it, and get this coat of paint on it, I think we're about 4.5 hours today. That does not include the time I spent talking with the customer, confirming prices and the logo that they want on it, sending messages back and forth. I probably have an hour or so in with the customer. I spent about an hour and a half this morning at the hardware store. It generally doesn't take that long at a hardware store, but they were rather busy today. It took a minute for someone to mix me my gallon of paint, and they were very busy with other stuff, other loads going out, so we just loaded it ourselves rather than stopping them from what they were doing and getting help.
Right.
But we were probably at the hardware store for an hour and a half, and I still have probably 4 more hours of getting the logo on here, only because I'm a perfectionist and it's going to take me a minute, and I'm not going to be, until I'm satisfied with it, it's not going to be done.
Right.
And that's going to involve getting a really good picture of the logo that I can project on here, and then add it painted on there. And you know, there's weather involved and good conditions and time and all that. So I probably have 4 more hours in it to get it finished. So I'll say I'm going to have about a total of 16 hours in it, and that's even going to give me an hour. It's probably going to take me an hour and a half to deliver it. By the time I get my trailer hooked to my truck, get it loaded on my trailer, take it to where it's going, place it where they want it, get it unloaded. So about 16 hours to complete one of these.
About 16 hours. This is something, folks, that if you just watch the video, you'd have a pretty good idea of what you would need to do. You've seen Josh do almost 95% of the work on this. We had a couple of phone issues where we didn't show you a little bit of the painting and adding the armrest supports underneath. But other than that, you've basically seen the entire chair being built. And that's the kind of videos we want to do here on OddJobs Hijinx, is to show you the project from beginning to end where feasible. And for those other cases where it could be just a repair job, you know, Josh is going to be showing you those kinds of jobs as well, and what tools are needed, time and skills maybe when it comes to math and those kinds of things. Well, Josh, how do you want to end your first video?
OddJobs Hijinx. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you on the next one.
Subscribe, like the channel, folks, and hit us with comments. Hit us with comments, but subscribe. We're an early channel, and we want to grow the channel as quickly as possible, and we're going to try to have content often, so that way you'll get to see these types of things in our area. For OddJobs Hijinx, we'll see you in the next video.